This is Chip Conley, and I'm coming to you from New Mexico in the United States, and I'm talking to Renae about the future of travel.
Hello, my name is Renae Leith-Manos. Welcome to this podcast, Where to from here. What a life you've had.
I feel very lucky. I do. I mean, it's been a rocky road at times, but I wouldn't trade it in for someone else's life.
And what is it about the hospitality industry that has engaged you for just so many years of your life?
Wouldn't it be fascinating to run a business that if you made people happy, you made more money? That's really what hospitality is all about. But I didn't get into it for the money. I got into it because of the name of my boutique hotel company, Joie de Vivre. How do you create joy of life in the world? And then I came to realize over time that I was creating memories for people. And so for 35 years now, it has been my core business.
And you always want to have a career in hospitality?
The only thing that was indicative of it was actually two when I was growing up in my teens. Number one is when we would go on family trips, usually in a station wagon, so to speak, a big car, and we'd be going out. Whenever we'd stay in usually a motel, I would write a review for the family of what our experience was like. I mean, like, who does that at age 13 or 14?
Correct.
Secondly, when I was about 10, I created a little neighborhood restaurant in my parents' living room, or actually in their dining room. It only lasted for 4 days, but I only made ice cream sundaes with chocolate fudge. But you know what? It was something I wanted to do. So I guess I've always wanted to help people feel good, and not just travel well, but feel well cared for along the way.
Absolutely. And, post-pandemic, what is making people happy now in travel?
People, the ability to connect with each other. That is, I think, the number one thing that was obviously missing during the pandemic. We had a deep desire to gather. And yet we've never really thought of the gathering industry. We think of restaurants, we think of hotels, we think of conference centers, we think of nightclubs, we think of yoga studios, but you don't sort of think of it as the gathering industry. And I wrote a white paper, an essay called Why We Gather. And it spoke to, and you can find it on Google, just Why We Gather, Chip Conley. And it speaks to the idea that people have a very primal need to connect in person, not just in this means where we're using technology.
Yeah, look, I do agree. And talk us through your involvement with Airbnb, because of course that is really another form of human beings connecting in a totally different way. Well, it was when it started.
Yeah, but I don't know if you could ever stay in one though, Renae. Come on, you got to stay in one of these days. You're an Australian. I mean, Australians love Airbnb. So let me say that I'd spent 24 years growing this boutique hotel company, Joie de Vivre, created 52 boutique hotels, 3,500 employees, then sold it. So Joie de Vivre is now part of Hyatt. And after I did that, I had the three young founders of Airbnb 9 years ago reach out to me and say, hey, we've got this tech startup that seems to be doing really well, but we don't know the travel industry. We've never run a company before. Will you help us? And that's how I started helping them in a full-time role as the head of global hospitality and strategy, and the mentor to the CEO, Brian Chesky, who was about 21 years younger than me.
Did you ever have any concept of how successful Airbnb was going to be in those early days?
No. In fact, I thought their idea was stupid. I mean, I really didn't believe, I was a hotelier. I was like, why would anybody want to stay in someone else's home, especially if they're staying there too? I can get if it's a beautiful home in the country and you're renting someone's second home, but why would you want to stay down the hall from your host? And then I started to experience it myself. And I saw that when it's executed well, and part of my job was to figure out how to implement systems for hosts and guests to have great experiences, that it actually can be as good and sometimes a better experience than a traditional hotel. But most importantly, it's affordable. And we know Aussies like to travel a lot, especially for extended periods of time. And Airbnb is a way to do that more affordably.
Absolutely. So in Airbnb, what would you say was your biggest contribution? What were you bringing to the table?
I think, I would say if I were to like maybe rank my top three, I would say helping Brian to be a great leader as the CEO. And I'm proud of him. 9 years later, he's been a very successful CEO, but he had no background in it at all. Number two is helping the company get really not going in too many directions at once. I mean, it's really easy when you're young and a leader to think you can do everything. And as you get older, you realize you can't do everything, but you got to do things really well, whatever you do. So I helped focus the company. And number three, I helped legitimize the company globally in the travel industry, because frankly, nobody believed this company would succeed. And most people looked at the company and were very dismissive of it. But because I was sort of the Secretary of State, as we call it in the United States, who was in charge of being the diplomat, building relationships all over the world in the travel industry and outside the travel industry, it allowed me to help give credibility to a company that some people just saw as this stupid millennial business, when in fact it had a huge amount of potential.
Congratulations on the success of the business. I mean, Airbnb is huge everywhere.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And you were mentoring the CEO, who was then 21, and you had a sizable.
Oh, he was 31. He was 21 years younger than me, but he was 31 years old.
I beg your pardon.
Yes.
Yeah. So he was 31 and you were considerably older. And was this the catalyst to your new business that you're about to tell us about?
Yeah, within a few months, they started calling me the modern elder at Airbnb. And I didn't like that so much. It sounded like elderly. And I said, I'm 52 years old. I'm not elderly. But they said, no, an elder is a relative term. And the average age at Airbnb is 26. You're 52. You're twice the age. So you're clearly an elder, but you're a modern elder because you're as curious as you are wise. And that I said, yeah, I am curious. And hopefully I'm wise. And that led me to sort of taking a role in the company where I was really learning as much as I was teaching. And so I called myself a mentor and an intern at the same time. And it helped me to see that, wow, what if we were to create a place where people could learn how to become modern elders in midlife or beyond? And so we created our first campus in Mexico on the beach, and have had 1,500 people from around the world, from 28 countries, including about 20 Australians, come to Mexico to our campus and experience the Modern Elder Academy, also known as MEA.
Wow. And so if I turned up, do you have to be a certain age, firstly? And what would happen if I turned up?
So we have had, strangely, we thought, okay, modern elders are people in midlife. They're people like getting prepared to become an elder. It's not just people who already are elders. And so we thought the average age would be somewhere between 45 and 65. And it is true that the average age is 54. But we've had people as young as 30 and as old as 88 come to the program. And 25% of the people are either younger than 45 or older than 65. So I was like, wow, that's surprising. There's a lot of people of all ages. There's a lot of millennials who say, I want to learn how to distill my wisdom along the way. And because we're a midlife wisdom school, there's some people who say, hey, wisdom is more important than knowledge these days, and I want to learn how to become wiser. And that's what the program's about. What do people learn? They learn how to navigate the transitions of midlife and beyond. They learn how to shift their mindset on aging, such that they see that aging is not necessarily purely a negative. Yes, there's some things, your body wears out, your memory is not as good, but there's a bunch of unexpected pleasures and things that you get better at as you get older. And we help people to see that. We help people to actually understand what kind of wisdom that they've developed in their life and how they might actually apply it somewhere else. We have a lot of people who say, I'm tired of doing the same thing I've been doing for 20 or 30 years. How could I go and apply what I've learned somewhere else? Like I did at Airbnb. I mean, I didn't understand a thing about technology, but I did understand something about hospitality and travel and entrepreneurship. And so we call this same seed, different soil. Someone can take what they've learned, but apply it in a whole new industry. And so that's part of what we do as well. When a person can shift their perspective on aging from neutral or negative to positive, you get an extra 7.4 years of life. So the mindset of having a positive perspective on aging has a more profound effect on your longevity. And not only are you going to live longer, you're probably going to be happier if you have a positive perspective on aging. But I also think people working out and staying in shape and having a positive perspective on their wellness is, a big positive.
Oh, 100%. How do you break
Yes.
through?
Well, it's a great question because that is a fundamental part of our program is how do you help people who are middle age become a beginner again? And we actually do it. We sort of sneak it in. So like the very first morning, we help them bake bread. And people are like, what am I doing at this MEA program? And I'm learning how to bake bread with, a small group of 4, and we're going to bake it for everybody else and then present it to them. Or how do I learn improv? Or how do I learn how to juggle? Or how do I, in some cases, learn how to surf? Or how do I learn how to write poetry? So our program, you wouldn't come to the program if you said, oh, it's just, I'm going to be a beginner at everything, because you just say, I don't want to look stupid, but you're looking stupid with 20 other people. And it's woven into the program in such a almost invisible way that you would say, you know what, I'm sort of realizing that I'm tired of dismissing new things, new ideas, new experiences. And it's one of the greatest gifts that people get from the program.
And how do you educate the general public to then accept older people perhaps back in the workforce, even in a different way? Because I know, speaking here in Australia is very ageist, particularly towards women. I spend a lot of time in Europe, and in England, it's not so. How do you convince people that older people have something to give back?
Well, you're absolutely right that women actually have more societal obstacles for their aging, partly because women are often judged on their looks more than men. And so if beauty and looks are what it's all about, the deck is stacked for younger people. But what I would say is that there's a growing sense that we're living longer and people want to stay in the workplace longer. So there are a lot of people who are 60 or 65 who might have retired if it was 20 years ago, but now they realize I'm going to live till 90. I'm not retiring at 60. What am I going to do for 30 years? So number one is there's a growing number of older people in the workforce. And this is true in Australia as well as the US. But secondly, I think there's a growing sense that diversity is important. We know gender diversity can be important on teams and in workplaces. Racial diversity is important. Sexual orientation is important. But it's just starting to become clear to people, and especially HR departments and companies, that age diversity is another form of diversity. And so if you're in an old line firm and it's very traditional, then you need to make sure you have lots of young people coming up the ranks. So it's not just old people making all the decisions. Similarly, if you're in a more technologically savvy company, maybe there's ageism toward older people. So you need to create the opportunity for young and old to create some intergenerational collaboration.
It makes so much sense. And what do you see as the future of travel? I mean, we're coming out of this global pandemic. People's habits have changed. What are you thinking that those changes might be?
Well, what we know is people are staying closer to home right now. I think people will. I think the idea of being a digital nomad, where you're going to actually travel, I think the Australians had it right. I mean, which is instead of just taking a 1-week vacation or maybe 2 weeks and travel, somewhere and then get back and you're so tired, give yourself more time to be a digital nomad. Learn how to do the work that you're doing from afar, assuming your company allows you to do that or that your work allows you to do that. And then actually imagine what it would be like if you didn't have a home at home, meaning think of your hotel or your Airbnb as not a home away from home, but it's a home instead of home. So I think what that might mean is more people saying, I'm taking a gap year and I'm going to go and travel on the road while I'm working, but I'm going to go see the world at the same time. I think that's beautiful for travel. Now, at the same time, I think a lot of people will stay closer to home for quite a while.
And the luxury traveler, how do you see the luxury sector being affected by what's happened?
The luxury sector always comes back because people have money. And so therefore, I think people wanting to so people wanting to stay in a beautiful hotel and feel safe, et cetera. But I think one of the things that has been interesting in the last couple of years is the luxury sector of travel moving into homes and saying, instead of me bringing my family, all 6 of us, and staying in 3 hotel rooms in a luxury hotel, let's go get a luxury home and rent that for a week. And we can have our own kitchen and we can have maid service still in our home if we want it. And I think an opportunity that Airbnb and other companies have been able to present to the world. And there's companies like Marriott now has a whole luxury villas division where they have really expensive homes on their site or available to their customers.
Dorchester's just launched one. Armand's just launched one.
Yeah, it's a thing. I mean, I'm proud of the fact that twice now I've been a disruptor of the hotel industry, first as a boutique hotelier and then as an Airbnb executive. So I'm not surprised that a lot of companies are jumping on the bandwagon, so to speak.
And Chip, where was your last holiday?
This last weekend here in New Mexico, I went away for 3 nights with a small group and we did a retreat. So it was here in this area. Beyond that, I spend a lot of time in Mexico, and because our primary MEA campus is there. So I do a lot of traveling around Mexico to beautiful places, whether it's Mexico City, which is not beautiful for some people, but it's fascinating culturally, or places like Tulum or other places like that.
How beautiful. So where to from here? The question we always ask our interviewees.
We have a tendency to overestimate how much change we'll have in our life in the next year. And we desperately underestimate how much change we'll have in the next 10 years. So I can tell you sort of what will happen in the next year, probably. But the next 10 years, who knows? I might be, I don't know. I think, frankly, I will be dedicated to MEA and the modern elder movement for the next 20 years, at least until I'm 80. And then I might just relax a little bit. But I'm looking forward to coming to Australia because it's one of my favorite places on earth. And I really love the idea of coming and doing some workshops there.
We're just not sure when we'll be able to let you in because the borders are locked.
I know. It'll happen.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It's wonderful to speak with you. And I can't wait to visit the Modern Elder Academy, hopefully in New Mexico at some stage soon.
Thank you, Renae. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person one of these days.
Absolutely. Bye, Chip.
Bye-bye.
Don't forget to subscribe here and follow us on Instagram and Facebook for regular travel updates. You can also hear our episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.